All right. So I think we have everybody on the line on the webinar. So welcome. We have today I'm going to be talking about creating or starting with a Power Platform Center of Excellence. So a lot of and there's going to be 3 webinars. This is the first webinar where we talk about sort of the introduction to it. A lot of this is talking about the process, a lot of the thinking that you need to, or preparations that are done beforehand. So we're actually not going to be very technical in terms of how we sort of set it up. What we're going to be looking at later is the Microsoft's own Center of Excellence starter kit that the PowerCat team has created, which is a really awesome tool that I definitely recommend that you use, and that we're also going to be looking at later, specifically in the second webinar. But yeah, for today, we sort of want to cover what is it that we actually need to sort of have in place. What are the prerequisites that we need to do before we can even get started with setting up our Center of Excellence to make sure that we actually get the full benefit of it. Actually, let me also just go ahead and start sharing my slides here because everybody wants to see a lot of great slides. So this is the first in the 3 webinars for working with the Power Platform Center of Excellence. So here we are getting started with your Center of Excellence, and these are the first steps in succeeding with the Center of Excellence journey. So a little bit about myself before we get started. My name is Søren. I've been working with Projektum for about 4 years. I'm a Power App solution architect. Besides that, I also work as a technical lead within Projektum to make sure that we have our own internal framework for best practice, and also the sort of responsible for keeping an eye on the Power Platform Center of Excellence at Projektum. So in my free time, my spare time, when I'm not working with Power Apps at Projektum, I have a blog, powerappsviking.com, and a YouTube channel, and also of course on Twitter, X, where I also talk about the Power Apps and the Power Platform, and also recently also did a blog post about the Center of Excellence and getting started. So you should check that out if you want to read more about that and other stuff. The agenda for today, an introduction to the Center of Excellence. What is it in general? What is the Center of Excellence? What is the purpose of that? How does that work? Some of the benefits of having a Center of Excellence. Then, before you start the implementation of Center of Excellence, what should you consider, and who should you involve in this? And then also a little bit about managing the resources when implementing a Center of Excellence. And then we will go to getting ready for the next steps, because then in the second webinar, we're going to focus on actually using the Center of Excellence starter kit and some other tools as well. But let's start with, so what are the benefits also of the Center of Excellence, and how do I get started? If you're just searching for this and trying to find some resources, Microsoft has a lot of excellent resources on this. You can find the Center of Excellence starter kit. That's probably the first thing you're going to find. Then there's the adoption workbook, adoption best practices, and the maturity model, which are actually new tools that were released. Some of it was released as late as last week by Microsoft, which gives a lot of guidance into sort of on your Center of Excellence, setting up that Center of Excellence and proceeding on that journey. But this is a lot of reading and a lot of different slides. Some of it says a lot of the same things, but there's also a lot of information to take in. So if you want a little bit of a condensed version, we're going to go through that here in this webinar. So a lot of companies we see, they are, and probably you are in the same sort of situation, that you don't start looking at this before you even have any Power Apps installed, or before you have any Power Apps licenses or in environments. You're probably already somewhere in your journey, and you're at a point where it's perhaps at a point where somebody is saying, or you yourself are saying, we actually need to have some sort of governance, because it's becoming maybe a little overwhelming, or you're just worried that how do I keep track of all my apps, all my developers, all these things, and sort of what we see for a lot of the companies we work with is that yeah, it's sort of a first there's just a couple of environments, a couple of makers, a couple of apps, and then everything sort of explodes, or at least it can feel like it explodes, and you're sort of trying to catch up and sort of being reactive instead of the ability to be proactive on this front. So this is what we sort of want to try to move past and say, okay, so how do we keep, how do you have a good governance process around your Power Platform? So governance is just a huge topic, and it's becoming bigger every day. We hear it from every company that we're working with that governance is just a huge topic for everybody involved in the Power Platform rollout. Maybe you already heard also about this, that of course, this is from not from Microsoft, actually Gartner, that has this, that the low-code platforms in general, there's a huge expectation that this is going to only increase in size, that companies are going to focus more and more on low-code development. So this, of course, means that all companies will have more citizen developers instead of these professional developers, which also puts a huge strain on being able to govern this in a different way, because instead of professional developers or pro developers that are used to using DevOps or working in GitHub, the citizen developers are doing it on the Power Platform, and the processes around that are simply just different. So it's the way that we manage that can be quite big, or at least it's something that needs to be focused on. So if we look at, for example, a Power Platform Center of Excellence, sort of an ideal setup. So you have you're saying, okay, I have a governance plan that I want to have a separation of my pro code, low code environments, where I say we have, let's say an example is we have two different departments, the sales and the PMO. And they have 3 environments each. They have their development, test, and production environment. Everything is good, everything is in order, and we have some Power Apps, some Power BI, flows, etc. Things are working there. And then outside of that, we have the low-code personal environment, the default environment, where you have your citizen developers that can test out some things and maybe make some small productivity apps. So this is of course, the ideal setup. This is what everybody sort of envisions, and this is also what happens in maybe in the beginning for a lot of companies. But then what happens is that at some point it simply explodes. You have all these different environments that are these low-code personal environments. Instead of the default environment, this is also becoming cluttered with a lot of different apps. And then you have personal environments, or you have some sort of a department that just gets one single environment when they're doing apps, and it's becoming extremely cluttered. And you still have your sales and your PMO department that are running specifically the way they should. So you want to sort of try to control this in some sort of way. Now, so before we also talk about how do we do this, let's talk about what the Power Platform Center of Excellence will not do. It won't provide you an overview of the environments, an overview of applications, an overview of citizen developers, flows, keeping track of your usage, and helping guiding the developers, and support your Power Platform rollout by itself. We see this a lot, that companies, they say, well, then I just install the starter kit, or then I just sort of install something, make a process. But doing all of this, just setting up that process or installing the starter kit by itself won't really do much of a difference. There needs to be resources that are dedicated to this. Depending on the company's size, it can be that it's just one person doing this every second week, or it can be that you have an entire team of people that are sort of keeping track of this every day, depending on the size and complexity of your organization. So instead of saying what it won't do by itself, it will help you do the following by supporting you and your team. But it is important that no matter what, you need to make sure that you have your resources that are allocated to this, that somebody is responsible for this, and somebody has to support this and has to keep track of this, managing this. So I stole a little bit of a curve here. So this is the Gardner hype curve, or the hype cycle, and this is also this represents quite well what sort of happens. You in the beginning, if you have a technology, and then you sort of have your peak. This is also a little bit what happens when some companies want to start using the center of excellence. Then in the beginning, you just install everything looks good. But then the sort of the through of disillusionment you get through this period of after you installed it, after you sort of think everything is done, if you don't keep track of it and actually implement the processes and follow up on them and actually make sure that they're followed through and use them every single day through a longer period of time, you won't get through this sort of the hard part that I identified here and over to the slope of enlightenment. So the most important thing here is that the reason I dedicated the first webinar to just the prerequisites is that instead of ending here in the first peak and just saying, well, we just install it and everything is fine, it's really important to talk about how do we make sure that before we even get started, that we can get through this part and have a good framework and system in place to handle that. So maybe before also we proceed, we can talk a little bit about different company sizes. So we can have a situation where, let's say that you're a small company of sort of corresponding to just a department in an enterprise that wants to start using the Power Platform. In that case, it might not be that it's that complex, your needs for governing it. Maybe that sort of if everybody's sitting in the same office, you have an idea of who's doing what and what is it that you want to achieve with the Power Apps and keeping track of that. As soon as you maybe go into people that are sitting in multiple different locations, that can add a level of complexity. It could also be that you are, let's say, you're a department within a larger company that started using the Power Platform, that was sort of an early adopter of the Power Platform, or that you're a company where the Power Platform is being rolled up company-wide. So this changes the need for the structure or the level of governance needed. What we see a lot of times is that it started as one department of a company that started using the Power Platform. Maybe they hired an external company to come in and create the first Power App, or maybe they created it themselves. And after that, sort of the rollout then happens in a little bit of an organic way. So there's no set strategy behind it beforehand. So also the goal of what the Power Platform should achieve or what you want to achieve changes during this journey, which also adds a level of complexity. So you need to think of not only where are you now and what are you doing with it, but what would you also like to achieve long term? Where could this lead? Could it be that you want to be able to support more developers, more departments starting to use the Power Platform, or are you actually completely content saying that it's only a specific area of the organization that is using the Power Platform, and we want to on purpose keep it that way? So that changes the level of how you want to do your Power Platform Center of Excellence strategy quite a lot. So let's look at in the Microsoft's own this adoption maturity model. There's these three levels that are identified based on where companies are, based on their maturity in terms of the Center of Excellence and working with the Power Platform. So it could be that for a lot of you're in the sort of initial levels where sort of you're able to work with it, but you're not at the repeatable area yet of saying we have a process that we can sort of repeat. We know that we can do the same thing again the next time the same way. Then we're moving into to sort of the upper levels. We'll also get more into that when we work with the tool itself in the next webinar. but it's also there's definitely some good literature there in these models that I recommend you also read up on. No matter what, you won't get by without also using some of the documentation that Microsoft have provided, and it's really good. I can definitely recommend also using that to support your Center of Excellence and the governance journey. But what is it that you should do in general if you want to sort of get started with your Center of Excellence and get started with creating this governance framework in general? So the first thing is have a Power Platform strategy. So what is actually your strategy? So I mentioned it earlier in terms of, do you want to sort of keep it to just a simple department where you have a few developers? Are you actually more focused on sort of pro code developers, or do you want to enable citizen developers, everybody to create productivity apps? You should get the Center of Excellence starter kit. You should implement DLP policies, these data loss prevention policies. We'll also get more into how those work exactly on the second webinar. But basically, what a data loss prevention policy helps you with is identifying the different connectors that are used in your Power Automate flows, to make sure that you don't have connectors that are where you're sending information between different systems or between different sources that you don't want. So, for example, something like connecting SharePoint to Twitter, and then somebody each day has a flow that takes every new row or every new information you have in a SharePoint list and puts that out on Twitter. If you have an example of somebody doing that, you also have another problem besides just the DLP policy. But the general idea is that these policies can be quite helpful. And one thing that's worth considering also is keeping as a lot of control in the beginning. There can be two ways of doing this. Either you're saying that we have a lot of trust in people are doing sort of things the right way, or we want to enable as much creativity as possible. Then the Center of Excellence can help you monitor that and keep an eye on that, and then you can say, okay, we can catch it. So if something does happen, if there is a situation where data is being managed the wrong way, you're able to manage that. Another way of doing it is implementing controls as soon as possible, setting up these guardrails where people will have to ask you every single time they need to enable the connectors. So your citizen developers are going to be creating a lot of support tickets or going to be creating a lot of requests, and that this puts an additional strain on the resources, the people that need to be allocated to this Center of Excellence. So there's also a sort of judging what is it that is actually important, how much time do you want to spend on that, and which level of freedom is actually important for you to have when you're working on the Power Platform within your company. Then there's things like environment policies. Should you create new environments? Should people be able to create their own environments freely, or should it go through a specific process? The same for makers. Can they just make any type of apps, or is there sort of a limit to that? And the starter kit supports all of this as well. So it's and we're going to be looking at those things as well. So then we get to the who. Now I copied this also from Microsoft's own documentation, and this looks like a lot, and it is a lot because in companies where let's say that you have 10 people that are working on the Power Platform, then you have a list of this looks like it's 20 people managing 10 people. So this can definitely be overkill in terms of sort of having too much strategy or too many resources set aside for simply managing this. So I would take this as a suggestion, and this is based on enterprise level corporations where the Power Platform is also available for everybody. We see examples of, for example, that a company that has 5,000 or 50,000 Power Apps licenses, where this would definitely make sense to have this sort of governance. But yeah, if you have 10 people with Power Apps licenses or 100 people with Power Apps licenses, then having these types of teams will look very different. It could be that the same person has several of these roles. But it is still good to think about who is going to fill out these shoes of these roles. You still need to have somebody that is in charge of your low-code strategy. You need to have somebody that is the admin, somebody that is able to nurture the makers. There needs to be a sponsor. There needs to be a sort of an owner of this. Then you have your champions, people that are the citizen developers that are sort of that can help others and be a good example. Is there somebody that needs to do training or is involved in that? If it's in different departments, who's the lead there, and also is somebody going to be in charge of communication, and how's that going to happen? So these are all things that definitely are worth considering here. Then also some other considerations. So yeah, as I mentioned, this webinar is strictly about the process and the prerequisites. So again, no technology. But yeah, let's say a couple of scenarios. Do you want to enable access to? Is it just for enabling access? It could be. We see cases where a company is using the Power Platform specifically for an application built by a third-party vendor. Then having a center of excellence might not even be necessary besides having an admin, simply a Power Platform admin, somebody that makes sure that the users have the correct level of access. And then also making sure that the company that is providing this application is conforming to some best practices. But you could also be in another situation. You could also have that a specialized team. You also see this. So within the company, that there are people that are specifically set to create apps. These can be either these personal productivity apps or apps created for departments. So there's also something worth considering in terms of the application is sort of two things. The data you're working with in general, is it data that is not critical, either business critical or that is in terms of GDPR? Is this sensitive data you're working with? If you're working with very general data that could also be freely put on the internet, on Twitter, for example, then the type of apps you're working with, you could give people a lot of creativity and a lot of freedom to do that. But if you're in the banking sector or in sort of a sector or health sector where you need to make sure that the data is protected and used in a very, very different way, this will arguably also put a lot of emphasis on the need for governance and a center of excellence team. Then considering let's see here, the text is being squeezed a little bit. Sorry about that. But yeah, the possibility. Do you want to sort of open this? I've also been touched upon this earlier. Do you want to open the possibility for citizen developer in departments to use this the low-code platform? This can be as Microsoft is selling it to leapfrog your productivity and also avoid these unnecessary development costs. Because we see a lot of examples where it's something as simple as making your SharePoint list or these shared Excel sheets that are being used to share information or to input data across organizations or within different or across departments or within a specific department. You want to simply streamline that process, make it easier, and have a better version of that. Then Power Apps is definitely the tool for you, and citizen developers can do this quite efficiently for at these lower development costs. So if that's sort of what you want to achieve, then governing it in that way, making sure that these tools are actually just available for the citizen developers is part of what you want to achieve with your Power Platform strategy. And then again, because I want to really stress this, which resources are you willing to dedicate to this goal? So, which type of governance guidance and which level of governance do you need? Do you want to provide training? Do you want to provide specific guidance for citizen developers that want to know more about the Power Apps, or do you want to point them in the direction of reading the Microsoft documentation or finding the information on a blog like mine, so they have to do this themselves, which is something that some companies do, but then then you're also managing what types of resources you want to put into it. So definitely consider that. And then, as I also mentioned before, you have some requirements for the guardrails. Consider which data you need to protect and how to identify this. If you don't know this beforehand, then I would caution against sort of opening up for use of the Power Platform and allowing citizen developers, especially if you know that you have sensitive data, then you really need to be aware of this. So that is a huge requirement. But of course, a lot of times we see that people are, of course, if they're working for your company, you trust them. So it might be that you want to enable it as much as possible. The one thing we always see is that if people want to create something, if they want to create a great app or want to start doing something, they'll find a way no matter what. So it can also be an advantage for you to instead of trying to be a hindrance and put in blocks, that you enable this and have a good way of being able to structure this and govern this instead. It will make everybody's life much easier. So yeah, so I want to sort of look at a checklist for getting started with the Center of Excellence. So it's a little bit of a summation in a way. So what is it that you want to achieve with your Center of Excellence? Do you want to have a very locked down system? Do you want to have a very open system? Do you want to dedicate a lot of resources to it, or simply just be able to look at it once every second week and see, is everything running the way it should be? Who is it that will support this? How many people are going to be working as administrators or nurturing this? Assessing the level of freedom for your citizen developers, identifying sort of these processes that need to be in place. So it's always this fit of keeping IT happy and keeping your citizen developers happy. IT is always going to be demanding some sort of a level of governance, but it's doing it with these tools here will be possible to do that while still allowing some freedom and creativity for your citizen developers. And then also defining what your goals are for your Power Platform rollout. Is it because your short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals can be wildly different. So your strategy and the way you dedicate your resource to it can vary a lot depending on sort of where you are in terms of this. Then the next steps, and when we're going to be looking at the Center of Excellence Starter Kit next time. So yeah, if you defined your Power Platform strategy, defining your Power Platform team, and also given some thought into your maker enablement journey. So how are you taking your makers from they're getting the access, they're getting their license for the first time, to actually being able to create their Power Apps, have their environments, create productivity apps, and perhaps become champions. Sort of how does this journey, what does this journey look like? Which level of support or which guardrails, which level of governance do you want along the way for these makers? So these would be the three main things I would recommend looking at. Yeah, let's see. Now I've been talking for maybe half an hour. Are there any questions in the chat, perhaps? Yeah, so let's just give everybody a couple of minutes to see if there's any comments or questions. And yes, and the next time, of course, we're going to be looking at the starter kit. So the starter kit, just to give a small preview to that. So that is a huge collection of flows, apps, and Power BI reports that can give you this overview of who are your makers, which apps are running, the use of these different apps, the environments, the different flows, cloud flows, and your robotic process automation flows, as well as Power Pages, of course. And this can be managed in you have your some model-driven apps and some Canvas apps where you can manage this, and some Power BI report for some statistics as well as some views for that. And I can definitely recommend that. And if you install this, let's say you installed the starter kit half a year ago or a year ago, then I also recommend to go in and update the kit. The PowerCat team within Microsoft, they update this quite a lot. They update it frequently, and their updates are quite extensive. So the new things that are happening are always quite impressive, and it's definitely worth keeping it up to date. The starter kit started out as a sort of a garage project. It's made within Microsoft but the PowerCat team, it's something that they do independently because they saw a need for this and wanted to enable this the Center of Excellence journey. So big kudos to that team for making this a really awesome tool. But yeah, we're going to be looking at that next time. All right, I think yeah, there's no questions so far, so we're just going to end the webinar. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody on the next webinar, hopefully. And we'll probably put this on YouTube, so then you can also post comments there, of course, if you think of anything later on. All right, thank you for now, and have a great day, everyone. Bye.